welcoming the legendary Alice Cooper to Loudwire Nights this evening for the first time, which would be highly intimidating if his reputation didn't precede him. He's the greatest showman, but as he's pointed out, all that means nothing without great songs to go along with it. He's also the man who's never turned down a picture and enjoys tap dance classes once a week with his family. So welcome to the onion that is Alice Cooper. Thank you for your time, sir.
You know, it's so funny. Every time I see that Geico ad of the clogging, that's us. Yeah, that's basically on Wednesday nights. And it's out of boredom. My wife and my two daughters are both professional dancers. My wife was with Joffrey Ballet, and my two daughters, one daughter's a comedian, the other one's a makeup artist, but they all were trained in dance. So they pick up tap shoes and they're Ginger Rogers, So for the guys, we're a little bit more awkward than they are, but it's at least something fun to do.
It sounds very much fun, and if anybody could make tap rock and roll, you're the man. So very cool.
I don't think you'll ever see it on stage. But
I don't think so. No, not at
least
show.
I know if push came to shove and somebody said tap dance, I'd go, okay. All right.
You can do it. All right. Now, we've been associating you with independent music venues since the 60s, right? Your time at Whiskey A Go-Go. Most recently, you were one of over 600 major recording artists to sign a petition urging Congress to offer financial support to independent music venues, 90% of those in danger of permanently shutting down. Why is it an important battle for you to win?
Well, we all started there. Everybody from, the Beatles to the Rolling Stones to Guns N' Roses to Alice Cooper to everybody. Anybody that's worth their salt in this business started in a bar somewhere or started in a small venue. Our Detroit days were in old theaters, movie theaters that were turned into rock dungeons, the East Town and the Grandy. And it would be us and Iggy and the Stooges and the MC5 and the Who. Those were pretty amazing rock dungeons. If you don't have that, how is a young rock band, ever going to get good? That's where you really get your bones. That's where you really learn how to play, is doing 4 sets a night, in front of, I don't care if it's 20 people or 200 people. That's where your fan base comes from. That's where the band actually becomes good enough to go out and then get on tour once they do make it. But you have to start, little Steven and I talked about this. You had to be in a bar, and in the late 60s, you had to make the audience dance.
Huh.
I don't care if you were doing Mustang Sally. If the audience was dancing, that means your band was good. And then you would go write your songs, and then you would go, but you still had to make money to keep the band eating, and that's really where you did it.
What's the max amount of sets you did on any gift, like on one particular night? Did you get to 4?
No, that was normal. 4 sets a night was normal for us. That was like, but we were doing, by that time, we were doing Yardbirds, we were doing the Who, we were doing the Kinks, and then we'd throw one of our songs in, and people would just kind of stand there going, who's that? But we were doing, that's how you learned. We did them, we did Chuck Berry, we did everybody you could think of, in those days. And then once the band got proficient in playing those songs, then you can go to your own and start writing your own stuff and, and see where you are with that. All of us go back to the Beatles. We all go back to 2 things, Chuck Berry and the Beatles. And Chuck Berry is your rock, sort of like foundation. The Beatles are, listen to any album and tell me those aren't perfectly written songs. So Ozzy and I both agree on this. Ozzy sits there and he says, man, if you don't listen to the Beatles, you can't write a song. And I said, I believe that religiously. So I tell young bands all the time, they say, what should we do? And I go, listen to the Beatles' first album. And they go, why? I said, because that's how a song's written. Then turn it into whatever you want it to turn in, but understand how to write a song.
I don't think anybody's going to debate you on writing a good song and which band to listen to get inspired for that. So the new single is titled Don't Give Up. Want to touch on that. It is the most 2020 song ever, right? Worked on it remotely about COVID-19, being promoted via Skype right now. Over 20,000 fans submitted images to be part of the video. It's a crazy number because you're Alice Cooper, but also because everyone's at home. Why did you want to write about COVID-19?
Well, it was a different point of view. I got tired of being a victim. I got tired, and I think people are tired of being a victim. You're locked into your house. You can't even see this enemy because it's so small. And there's so many rumors. You don't know what the truth is about any of this, except people are getting sick and Very few people are dying, but people are getting sick, okay? And I said, I'm tired of being a victim. I think that the whole world now should get up off the canvas like Rocky and beat this guy, you know. And so Alice was basically talking to the virus, going, hey, you know, we're not afraid of you anymore. Yeah, you're the bully. We're going to punch you in the nose, and we're going to be here, and you're going to be gone. You know, that's just the way it is. And I think it gave the audience maybe a little bit more of a positive view about this thing, that this is not the end of the world. We're going to win this battle, and don't give up.
A glimmer of hope in these uncertain times, if you will.
Yeah. Uncertain times is going to be like I think that's going to be the password for this, at least 2020.
Yeah, definitely. It seems like cancel culture is coming for most who seemingly deserve it in 2020. If it's overboard, debatable. But is there anything that you've ever written or done on stage or off that you would take back if you could?
You know, yeah, that's always, you know, those things are always of the moment. You know, there's songs I wrote that I went, we did a song called No More Love at Your Convenience, okay? That was a total dig on disco. You know, I mean, it was an absolute, it was during, you know, Saturday Night Fever, that kind of whole thing like that. And of course we did a song because of its absurdity. And people thought we did it for real. I mean, they thought I was serious. And I had to go, wait. You know my sense of humor by now. You know that I'm not doing this song for real. And it did kind of backfire on me, you know. And it was because it was a good disco song. And I couldn't help from the fact that it ended up being a pretty good disco song. But I kind of went, you do get this, right? You get the fact that this is a put on.
Yeah.
And no, they thought I was serious, so I had to explain my way out of that one. A lot of the early stuff that we did, you know, with the all the gore and that was to make the parents hate us so that the kids would love us, you know, and that was, and if they didn't see the humor in that, there was something really wrong. Later on, everybody caught up with the tongue-in-cheek of what we were doing on that. Again, you said something very smart at the very, very beginning of this thing. You said it's all about the music and the good songs. Boy, there's not one band out there. If you don't have the songs, you're going to be a puppet show. Yep. You have got to write great songs.
Agreed. And speaking of great songs, an upcoming album. I know you have to have the most epic stories ever. I mean, you partied with Jim Morrison and Jimi Hendrix and Keith Moon, but your next album is titled Detroit Stories. So can you share with us one of your favorite Detroit memories, maybe something that found its way onto the record?
Well, for one thing, you know, Alice Cooper was always, this came as an epiphany the other day for me. A lot of times I'll write an album and then I won't get it until later. I try not to write. There were actually times when I try not to write a story album. And it just comes so naturally to me that after I write 12 or 13 songs, that somehow they all fit together as a story. Paranormal was not supposed to be a story. And then I realized every character I wrote about was paranormal. And it became a story. So this album, I said, the thing about it is, Alice was always an outsider. Alice was not Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Alice was not Tom Petty. Alice was not any of these things that were just immediately acceptable. We were always that outside kind of delicacy that if you got it and liked it, great. So I was accepted. But really, it was always sort of like on the outside. Detroit is that city. Mm-hmm. Detroit is a city that's the outsider. I mean, it's the toughest city. It's the hard rock city in the United States. All the bands that came out of Detroit were all outsiders when you think of it, from Jack White to Alice Cooper to Iggy to MC5. We were never the mainstream at all. Yeah. Detroit is just exactly like that. Detroit is not mainstream. They're their own people, and it happened to me that when I decided to write an album about Detroit, because I'm from there, it just all came together to me. That I'm an outsider. Detroit's an outsider. This album is about that city because of that. If it would have been about Cincinnati, it would have been But Detroit has its own. It has its own. It's its own monster. You know what I mean? And I mean, any city where you find out that the mayor is smoking crack and you reelect him.
Oh, I remember that. Crazy.
I mean, come on.
Crazy.
That is brilliant. I mean, that's pure Detroit.
I love it. I'm up on my time. Do you mind if I ask you one more question?
Sure.
Thank
Anything,
you.
Toni.
I appreciate that. I've been moved by the way you speak about your wife, Cheryl. You've said, quote, I fell in love the moment I saw her. We've been together for 43 years. I've never cheated on her. She trusts me on the road. If you marry the person you're in love with, you'll never do anything to hurt her. Those words, they speak to your character. Now I ask you, do you think that the rock and metal community as a whole, musicians and fans, have their moral compass pointing in the right direction? If you were all of our actual godfathers, what would you say about where we're headed?
Well, it's like anything else. My kids say, "How do I know it's the right person?" I said, "You know, because you know." There's never going to be a moment where you doubt that. You marry the person you're in love with, not the person you love. Because there's a lot of girls that I loved, but there's not one that I was in love with, and that was Cheryl. And in that case, you're never going to ever you would never do anything to hurt that person. So you would never cheat on them. You know, in the metal world, I get it. You know, it's, I talk to guys and they go, man, how do you stay married? You know, Cheryl's so cool. She's a rock, but she's also Christian, and she can sing choir, she can sing opera, she's a prima ballerina, but she's also Mademoiselle Guillotine. She's the perfect woman for you. And I said, yeah, I know. It's insane. We make each other laugh every day. I mean, that's it. And then I go, so what's your situation? Well, I'm on my sixth wife. You know, the first 5 strippers that, and I go, wait a minute. First of all, let's understand this. When you're on the road, your wife is stripping for other guys, and you're sleeping around, going, well, it's not sex because I'm on the road. I said, how do you expect that marriage to stay together? Really? I said, if you were, and they said, well, I love my wife. I said, no, you don't. No, you couldn't. You wouldn't do this if you loved your wife, and she wouldn't be. I said, you've got to find something a little more stable than just, oh, well, marriage is just okay. If we don't like it, we'll just get divorced. Cheryl's dad is a pastor. My dad was a pastor. My granddad was a pastor. I came up in a whole different thing. When you got married, you got married. And that meant the whole package. And that meant you didn't just throw it away just because you could. I've never, ever expected to be in a marriage where every single day I'm still in love with my wife. I mean, I look at her and I go, wow, look at this chick. I still pursue her like she's not my wife, and beautiful. I think that's maybe a unique situation, but it shouldn't be. I mean, that should be the way it is. There is a moral core with everybody. I've never met one metal guy that didn't have that soft spot somewhere. If you check a metal guy's albums, somewhere in there's a Carpenter's Greatest Hits. Somewhere hidden away is a romantic album of some type, because we all have that. We all have that in us. I was fortunate enough to find, my wife early on in my life, so I didn't make any mistakes. Before Cheryl, I made a lot of mistakes. Let's put it that way.
I know. I read, you seemed like you were just like a hopeless romantic. Like you said, you fell in love 20-something times by the time you were something like 13, which was pretty cute.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if I was in love or in lust, but, I felt like I was in love. And then, I realized, could you live without this girl? Yeah.
No.
And then I finally got with Shirley. Could you live without her? No. And that was the key right there.
Love it. Heartwarming. Love it. All right. Alice Cooper, thank you. I held you over a little bit longer than I should have. A million thank yous. We'll keep our ears open for news on Detroit stories. And once again, thank you so much for your time.
Toni, keep doing what you're doing, because I think you're doing what you want to do. And that's the most important thing.
I am. Thank you. I appreciate that.